and this is a well-known scripture to us about revival. In the midst of a time in Israel when they were in spiritual decline, which was common for them, they said, Lord, will you not revive us again so that your people may rejoice in you? So I don't want you to think that they're asking for something that they've never had in this passage. They want to have what they used to have. They want to have what they lost because they realized that there were aspects of their relationship with God as a nation that were gone, that used to be there. And when this psalm starts, the plea is, God, we remember how good you were to our ancestors. And we remember that when they got far away from you and they cried out to you, you opened your heart to them and you came back to them and you revived and refreshed them. And because you're the kind of God who does that, we want you to do that for us, right? And notice the connection in this verse, just before I go on, between reviving and rejoicing. When we are not revived, we don't rejoice in God. We rejoice in a lot of other things, but we don't rejoice much in God. We go whole days without thinking about Him, referencing Him, giving thanks to Him. Whole days can go by. And then those days grew into weeks, and the weeks grew into months. And in the whole process, we find that the only time that we really think about God are those times that we're supposed to meet together, say between 10 and 12 in the morning on Sundays. If we are not revived, instead of rejoicing in God and all the goodness that we see in Him, instead of doing that, we complain and we grumble a lot. So whenever I hear in myself or in other people that I know or in a church that I'm working with, a lot of grumbling and complaining, I know that they need revival. And they don't need revival so they can see more manifestations. They need revival so they can have their hearts changed. Because when there's a lot of grumbling and complaining and very little rejoicing, that means that our vision we've been blinded to the goodness of God, and we are far too critical in our vision of the other things around us. Now, this can happen to anybody here, and may have happened to you, may be happening to you right now. But the connection here is between revival and rejoicing in God. And we rejoice in God because we see Him doing things in us that were not possible to be done in any other way, right? So let's hold on to that idea and then consider this. Our God is a reviving God. He's not a stingy God. He's not a God who isolates Himself. He's not a God who's hard to reach, difficult to go to. He is a God who is open-hearted to all of us if we open our hearts to Him. It's not hard. He loves to give life. He loves to restore lost life. He loves to energize His people. This is something that is in our God. This God that we don't see with our eyes manifests Himself in our lives, makes His life available to us freely, without price, without cost. We can't earn it. We can't buy it. We can't deserve it. We can just open our hearts to Him. He's that kind of a God. So He is a reviving God. At the end of this message, I'm going to show you another scripture that talks about just how abundant God is in His ability to revive us, right? So if revival then means giving life or restoring life that once was there, it's all about life. The word revival is based upon a word that means, I don't know if you ever vive, but you do revive. So if somebody is dying, you revive them. And if they're out of breath, you try to get them revived. And that's the same idea, restoring life to someone or something. But we have to understand then what the purpose of life is. Because if God in revival gives us His life or helps us to connect with His life in a way that perhaps we haven't been, then that life has a purpose. And the purpose is always the same. The purpose of life is fruit. Always. Now, let's talk about what fruit means. Fruit means any evidence of God's life expressed through our lives, individually or collectively. Fruit means any evidence of God's life expressed in and through our lives. It can mean the fruits of the Spirit in Galatians 5. All of those attitudes, and aspects of love that are a part of our life, produced in our lives by the life of God. It can mean manifestations of the Spirit through gifts or anything that His life creates in that way. It can mean ministries that He raises up. It can mean the way we think and care about each other. It can mean anything in any dimension, in any way that is produced in our life through our connection with His life. That's revival. That's what life is. And the purpose of revival is life. And the purpose of life is fruitfulness, so that we are bearing fruit to the glory of God. I have this devotional that I listen to sometimes in the mornings, and today I listened to the one for Friday because I'm 2 days behind. And when I turn it on, this particular devotional is a little strange because it doesn't have loud music. It has often Gregorian chant sung in Latin or some other language. And then they tell you what it means. And this particular one said, the monks of some certain abbey are singing, I have called you and ordained you so that you will bear much fruit, and your fruit shall remain. And so I listened to that, and then I listened to the parable of the sower, and I realized that it's always been in the mind of God that the people that He redeems and that He is living in and through would express His life. That's fruit. It doesn't matter. Don't try to make it just the fruits of the Spirit or just the number of souls that get saved. It includes every expression of His life in and through our lives. And when we are revived, we see a lot of that. When we are not, we don't. And so that means that the real core principle of revival is connection. And Jesus told us this, didn't He? He said, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, then you will bear much fruit. So we have to abide in Him. The song that we used to sing about this about 25 years ago goes like this. You are the vine, we are the branches, keep us abiding in you. Some of you know this song, right? You are the vine, we are the branches, keep us abiding in you. And we'll grow in your love, and we'll go in your name, and the world will surely know that you have power to save and to heal. You are the vine, we are the branches, keep us abiding in you. Such a simple song, such a profound truth, such a powerful result when we are abiding in Him. And abiding doesn't mean that we visit Him from 10 to 12 on Sunday morning. Abiding means we live in Him, and He lives in us, and His life is in us. Do you know why that's possible? Because Jesus died for us, rose from the dead, ascended to the Father's right hand, sent the Spirit of God into the world so that He could inhabit every single one of us, and His life could be in our lives constantly, continually, regularly, consistently, bearing fruit to the glory of God. This is not possible without Him, but with Him it is completely possible. And that means that it's impossible without Him to have these fruits that we're talking about this morning in our lives. But with Him, it's very possible. It's very possible. You know, Jesus said, when the seed bore in good soil, it bore fruit 30-fold, 60-fold, 100-fold. And I don't know that he was saying that there are some that are better than others. He was simply saying the capacity of some may be different than the capacity of others. Look, a strawberry plant can create a lot of strawberries, and it's fulfilling its purpose, right? A durian tree might not create as many durian on one tree as that strawberry plant produces strawberries, or a cherry tree produces cherries, but it's bearing fruit in its kind for the purposes of God, and that's what's important. And so our lives are the same way. We don't compare. That's futile. If I were to compare the fruitfulness of my life to the fruitfulness of your life or someone else's life, I would always either feel proud or depressed. And so we don't compare. We just simply say, let's open our lives to God and see what His life produces in ours. So now, just 5 dimensions in which we bear fruit. Now, this is very simple stuff. There's no rocket science here today. There are no deeply hidden, hard-to-find spiritual truths. Because personally, I don't like to go after stuff like that. I like to find the essentials and talk about the power of those essentials in our lives. I feel much better about doing that than I do about trying to find some secret lost thing that nobody ever talked about. So we're talking about things that are very obvious, and it's simply a refresher course for some of you, but for some of you it might be an opportunity to open up an area of your life to God that's been closed down for some reason, right? So the first dimension then of revival is an upward dimension. That means that whenever there is a fresh expression of His life in our life, when we are connecting, there will always be this upward dimension of revival. It restores our honor and our worship of God and our desire to please God. In 2 Kings chapter 19, in one of the prophecies I think it's repeated also in the book of Isaiah, it says this: the remnant of the people will take root downward and they will bear fruit upward. And that's the first dimension of revival. You see, when Israel was away from God, they did not honor God. They sometimes still had their temple worship, and they sometimes still went through the motions, but it meant nothing to them. In fact, in the book of Ezekiel, God said, your worship has become to you like entertainment. And He said to Ezekiel the prophet, Son of man, let me tell you what's happened with these people that you're talking to every week. They come and listen to you as though they're interested, but you are to them nothing more than an entertainer who plays skillfully on an instrument and sings with a good voice. They listen, but they don't do anything about it. And they say to themselves, let's go hear what the prophet has to say. Yeah, that'll be good. I mean, he's always got something encouraging to say or something really, really scary to say. Let's go hear what the prophet has to say. And that's exactly the attitude that those people had. None of you here have that attitude. None, I hope, but I speak by faith. None of you here have that attitude, that it's just a form of entertainment. Because frankly, in our day and time, there are a whole lot of places that are going to be a lot more entertaining than this is. A whole lot of people who can sing better, a whole lot of people who can create more of an experience for you. If that's what you're after, that's not why you're here. But if you're after being in a place where there's a group of people together who want to find out what it means to really honor God and love Him, that's why you're here. And we're not here to impress you. None of us are. We are here to make it possible for you to know or to be reconnected with or to be thankful for this great God who is the source of everything for us. So when we have this upward dimension of revival to God, it turns our hearts to God as our Creator, as our Father, as our Redeemer, as our Provider, and anything else that you can name that He is. We find that we are giving God true honor, and we find that we are giving Him worship from our hearts. It isn't just something that we do. It actually proceeds from down in here somewhere, in our inner man. We are truly thankful for all that God has given us, and we don't grumble, and we're not so bitter. We make true surrenders to Him when we do this. All of last year, and maybe the year before, the song that I kept singing when I was by myself and I'd find myself singing a song. Do you ever do that? You know, you're by yourself and you find yourself singing a song. The song that I kept hearing myself singing all of last year was another old song. Jesus shall take the highest honor, and Jesus shall take the highest praise. It became like a prayer. It became like a confession. I would sing it in churches. I would ask the people in the church to sing it and think about some area of their life or some person that they knew or someone that didn't know Jesus yet. And we would confess it together. Let Jesus take the highest honor. Let Jesus take the highest praise.